Picture a mountain road in Hunan province. It's midnight. The fog is so thick it feels like wet wool against your face. You hear a sound, not a scream, but a rhythm. Clang, silence, clang. Then you see them. Shadows in the mist, a line of figures moving in perfect, terrifying unison. They don't walk, they don't run, they hop. Arms locked straight out, stiffness in every joint, moving with a mechanical, unnatural bounce. Thud, thud, thud. Leading them is a priest ringing a copper bell, warning the living to hide their eyes. If you grew up in the West, you probably know Dracula, the charming aristocrat in a cape. But in the East, the nightmare wears a different face. It wears the official robes of a Qing Dynasty bureaucrat. It doesn't want your blood, it wants your breath. This is the Xiangxi, the stiff corpse. But here's the thing about monsters. They usually start as something real. And the story of the Xiangxi isn't just a ghost story. It's a tragedy about migrant workers, bad geography, and the desperate need to go home. To understand the monster, we have to ignore the movies for a second and look at the map. Specifically, the rugged, mountainous terrain of western Hunan. In the Qing Dynasty, if you were poor, you left home. Men from these mountains migrated to other provinces to work as laborers. It was brutal work. Disease, accidents, exhaustion, death was a common co-worker. And this created a spiritual crisis. See, in Chinese culture, there's a concept called Wo Ye Gui Gun, fallen leaves return to their roots. You cannot be buried in foreign soil. If you are, your soul becomes a hungry ghost, wandering forever, starving for offerings your family can't give you because you're 500 miles away. But transporting a body back home? That required a wagon, a boat, and money. A lot of money. Money these families didn't have. So they hired a corpse driver. The legend says these Taoist priests used dark magic. They'd bind the ankles of the dead, slap a talisman on their foreheads, and command them to hop home under the cover of night. But history tells a more practical story. It was an optical illusion, a brilliant, macabre magic trick. Here's how they actually did it. The corpse drivers would take two long, flexible bamboo poles. They would slide these poles under the armpits of the corpses, tying the arms down to the bamboo. Then, two strong men, one in the front, one in the back, would hoist the poles onto their shoulders. Imagine the silhouette. The bamboo is invisible in the dark. The men carrying the load are obscured by the line of bodies. As the porters walked, the bamboo flexed. The dead bodies, suspended in a row, would bob up and down rhythmically. From a distance, in the flickering lantern light, it didn't look like transport. It looked like the dead were hopping of their own volition. The priest rang the bell not to control the spirits, but to tell the villagers, "Stay inside, don't look. We are moving death, and it is bad luck to see it." It was a solution born of poverty and love. But the image, that stiff, rhythmic bouncing, burned itself into the cultural memory, eventually mutating into one of the most specific monsters in global folklore. So, what exactly is a Xiangxi? Western media calls them hopping vampires or Chinese zombies, but both of those names are wrong. A zombie is a rotting, infectious meat sack. A vampire is a seductive immortal. The Xiangxi is something else entirely. To understand it, you have to understand the Chinese soul, or rather, the two souls. In Taoist metaphysics, you don't just have one spirit, you have a team. First, you have the Hun. Think of the Hun as your personality, your intellect, your morality. It's the driver of the car. When you die, the Hun is supposed to leave the vehicle and go up to heaven. Then, you have the Po. The Po is the body's operating system. It governs your instincts, your movement, your hunger. It's the engine. When you die, the Po is supposed to rot into the earth with the flesh. A Jiangshi happens when the driver leaves, but the engine keeps running. If a person dies violently, or if they aren't buried properly, the Po soul gets stuck. It stays in the corpse. But without the Hun to guide it, there is no morality, there is no memory. There is only a blind, biological drive to survive. And because it's a corpse, it suffers from rigor mortis. That's why it's Jiang stiff. It can't bend its knees, it can't flex its elbows. If it wants to move, it has to hop. It doesn't eat brains. It doesn't even really drink blood, historically speaking. It eats qi, life force. The Jiangshi is basically a rechargeable battery that has lost its charger. It's running on 1%, so it hunts the living to steal their 100%. It's a terrifying concept. In the West, we fear the monster because it's evil. In the East, the Jiangshi is feared because it's a malfunction. It's a glitch in the spiritual bureaucracy. You might think this is all peasant superstition, but in the 1700s, the smartest men in China were obsessed with these things. Enter the scholars Ji Yun and Yuan Mei. Think of them as the Mulder and Scully of the Qing Dynasty. They were high-ranking officials who spent their spare time collecting tales of the strange. They didn't just write ghost stories, they wrote field guides. They categorized the Jiangshi with scientific precision, like they were studying a new species of beetle. According to Yuan Mei, a Jiangshi isn't just one thing. It evolves. It levels up like a video game character. At first, you have the white stiff. The corpse grows long white hair, which is actually a fungus, and it's slow and stupid. A nuisance, really. If it feeds enough, it sheds the white hair and grows black hair. It becomes a black stiff. Now it's bulletproof. It's angry. But if you let it go for decades, it becomes a flying stiff. It regains its intelligence. It can cast spells. It can fly. And eventually, if it survives for centuries, it becomes a drought demon. A creature so powerful, its mere presence sucks the moisture out of the land, causing famine for miles. Yuan Mei tells a story about a miner who died underground. The earth and metal qi in the mine preserved his body. Years later, he crawled out, not as a rotting corpse, but as a stiff, stone-like monster. But here's the twist: he was vain. He forced a painter to draw his portrait. It's a weird, eerie detail. It suggests that even when the soul is gone, some fragment of human ego remains. These scholars cemented the lore. They took oral tradition and gave it rules. And the most important rule they codified was how the monster hunts. It's blind. Its eyes are useless jelly. It hunts by smell, but not the smell of sweat, the smell of breath. When you breathe, you are circulating qi. To a Jiangshi, your breath is a lighthouse beam in the dark. If you hold your breath, the lighthouse goes dark. You become invisible. This one mechanic, the hold your breath rule, would define the legend for centuries. Now, we have to address the outfit. If you see a Xiangxi in a movie, a video game, or a Halloween costume, it is always wearing the same thing. The navy blue, embroidered official robes of the Qing Dynasty, complete with a stiff Mandarin hat. Why? Why not hanfu? Why not a t-shirt? There are three theories here. The first is practical. The folklore was recorded during the Qing Dynasty. If you dug up a fresh Jiangshi in 1780, that's what they would be wearing. It's the same reason Dracula wears a tuxedo. He's stuck in the fashion of his era. The second theory is cynical. In the Hong Kong film industry of the 1980s, Qing Dynasty costumes were cheap. They had warehouses full of them from period dramas. Low budget means you use what's on the rack. But the third theory? That's the interesting one. It's political satire. The Qing Dynasty was founded by the Manchus, who conquered the Han Chinese. For centuries, there was tension. Many Han Chinese viewed the Qing officials as rigid, unfeeling, blood-sucking bureaucrats who preyed on the common people. By depicting the Jiangshi in these specific robes, storytellers were making a quiet, biting joke. They were saying, "Look at this stiff, mindless monster draining the life out of us. Remind you of anyone you paid taxes to lately?" The stiffness of the corpse mirrored the stiffness of the bureaucracy. And then there's the yellow paper on the forehead. The fulu. This is a Taoist restraining order. It's a strip of paper with a spell written in red ink, usually chicken, blood, and cinnabar. The idea is that the spell carries the authority of the gods. By sticking it on the Jiangxi's head, you are essentially putting a spiritual boot on the car. You are suppressing the Po soul, freezing the body in place. So, you're in a temple, it's midnight, and a guy in a blue robe is hopping toward you. A gun won't work. He's already dead. What do? You need the Taoist toolkit, and honestly, it looks less like a weapon rack and more like a grocery list. Item number 1. The peach wood sword. In Chinese mythology, the peach tree is the essence of the 5 elements. It is pure yang energy life, heat, Sunday. The Jiangshi is pure yin death, cold, shadow. When you hit a Jiangshi with peach wood, it's like hitting an ice cube with a soldering iron. It burns. Item number 2. A mirror. Specifically, a Bagua mirror. Jiangshi are terrified of their own reflection. But more importantly, a mirror reflects sunlight. It concentrates yang energy into a laser beam. Item number 3. Glutinous rice. Yes, sticky rice. The stuff you eat with mango. This is the kryptonite of the Jiangshi world. In traditional Chinese medicine, sticky rice is used to draw out toxins. It's considered pure. If you throw raw sticky rice at a Jiangshi, it acts like acid. It sizzles and pops on their skin. It draws the corpse poison out of the body. And finally, there's a weird weakness shared by Western vampires, arithmomania, the obsession with counting. Old folklore says that if you're being chased, you should throw a bag of coins or a handful of rice on the ground. The Jiangshi, possessing a low-level, obsessive mind, will be compelled to stop and count every single grain. 1, 2, 3. It highlights the tragedy of the monster. It has no higher thought. It is easily distracted by the mundane, trapped in a loop of meaningless tasks, just as it's trapped in a body that won't die. For a long time, the Jiangshi was genuinely scary. But in 1985, everything changed. Hong Kong released a movie called Mr. Vampire. It was a massive hit. It took the horror of the Jiangshi and mixed it with kung fu and slapstick comedy. Suddenly, the hopping wasn't scary. It was funny. You had scenes of incompetent priests accidentally blowing the talisman off the zombie's face. You had characters holding their breath until they passed out, turning blue while the monster sniffed around their ears. Mr. Vampire turned the Jiangshi into a pop culture icon. It became the mascot of Hong Kong cinema. But then, as all trends do, it died. The movies got silly. We had musical Jiangshi. We had baby Jiangshi. The fear evaporated. However, the echo didn't fade completely. It just moved. Today, the Jiangshi is alive and well in video games. Look at Genshin Impact. You have Chi-Chi, a cute, forgetful little girl with a talisman on her head who gathers herbs. She stretches to prevent rigor mortis. Look at Overwatch. Mei has a Jiangshi skin hopping around the battlefield. We have Moai-fied the monster. We stripped away the rotting flesh and the tragic backstory and kept the cute hat. But in 2013, a movie called Rigor Mortis tried to bring the darkness back. It stripped away the comedy. It showed the Jiangshi as a creature of grief, a woman resurrecting her husband because she couldn't let go. It reminded us that at the core of this legend is a deep, unbearable sadness. So, why does the Jiangshi still hop? Why, out of all the monsters in the world, do we remember the stiff corpse in the blue robe? I think it's because the Jiangshi represents a very specific anxiety. It's not just the fear of death, it's the fear of baggage. The Jiangshi is the past that refuses to stay buried. It's the ancestor who becomes a burden. It's the tradition that has become stiff and rigid, blindly consuming the energy of the young. But it's also a story about home. Remember those corpse drivers in the mist? They weren't raising an army of the undead. They were just trying to get their brothers back to the village. They were trying to fulfill a promise that no one gets left behind in the cold earth of a strange land. The Jiangshi reminds us that the dead have a hold on us. We carry them on our backs, stiff and heavy, hoping we can get them to a place where they can finally rest. And until we do, we're all just holding our breath in the dark, hoping the past doesn't notice we're here. Thanks for watching.